Okay, everybody. I figured since it's a snow day, I should record myself in Alaska with the Aurora Borealis because it's freezing outside. So, welcome to the Arctic. Let's talk about supply and demand. Um, Let me share for you my screen. Okay. Um, you should have in front of you the printed page of notes for topic 1.6. Um, you have notes in one page, and then you have some practice graphs in the other. I realize now that those practice graphs in the top corner, there are some shifts that are described, but I'll just give you a second paper when we come back, and we'll do that as like in class practice. So just go ahead and use the graphs, but to practice the shifts that I have in this PowerPoint. So disregard the top left where it has like, here are the different shifts we're going to look at. We'll just use the ones in the PowerPoint. Cool. Cool. Okay. So here's the deal. Supply and demand taken individually don't make any sense. You have to look at supply and demand together as a tool, kind of like this pair of scissors, right? Each blade, I'll put it in front of my face, then you can see it. Each blade represents one part of the tool, right? So it doesn't make very much sense to try and use a pair of scissors with just one blade. The whole point is that they are effective when they work together. And so supply and demand are the same way. You've got supply and you've got demand. And when you use them together, that is how the tool properly functions. But we had to learn them in pieces. You got to like walk before you run, or I don't know, whatever bad sports metaphor you want to use. So if we were to take a supply schedule or a demand schedule and put them together, why is it not giving me I'm sorry, y'all. I should have an annotation tool, and it doesn't want to let me have an annotation tool. That's super annoying. Hold on. I'm just going to pause you. Okay, JK, I figured it out. I can use my stupid Apple Pencil now. So let's try again. Okay. Um, Supply and demand's a tool. They only work when we use them together. So if we were to have this graph and we were going to graph this demand schedule over here and put it in combination with this supply schedule over here at all of the same price levels, you can see that we have different quantities. So at $5, you have 10 being demanded, but at $5, you have 50 that are being supplied. So again, when we graph this, price goes on the Y, quantity goes on the X. And so here's our demand to the dirt over here. And each of these price points are being represented. Now, once we get into this more, we are not going to graph the actual demand schedule. We're just going to put a generic curve for supply and demand. But I really want to make sure you illustrate the concept that each of these points along the curve represent a different combination of price and quantity, either the quantity that's being supplied or the quantity that's being demanded. So here's our demand curve and here's our supply curve. Now, um, what we want is this point right here. So, how do we know what is the right price and what is the right quantity? Well, it is where the solution lies, which is where they intersect. So, we're going to call that our equilibrium point, equilibrium price, and equilibrium quantity. We don't really have to differentiate between quantity supplied and quantity demanded, but we are looking at the point at which they intersect. And so here it is at $3 and a quantity of 30 being supplied and a quantity of 30 being demanded. So that's our equilibrium. So we always have to start looking at these scenarios from an equilibrium point. Now, trust me, when we get further down the road, we might start from a point of disequilibrium, but we're going to walk before we run. So we're starting in equilibrium, and then we're going to do some sort of shift and then see where our new equilibrium point lies. Okay, so equilibrium price is $3 and a quantity of 30. Okay. So, what happens at $4? Well, at $4, on the demand schedule, you are at this point over here, and people only want 20. You only have 20 units being demanded, because apparently consumers have decided that price is too high. And at this point over here on the supply curve, again at $4, again, we're looking at this point here. Uh, you have suppliers saying, yeah, sure, we'll supply 40 units for $4. We love that price. But do the consumers love that price? No, they don't. And so what happens when we set the price at 4, then the quantity that's being supplied is greater than the quantity that's being demanded. So what have we created here? We've created what economists would call a surplus, meaning there's too much out there available for what people want. They're like, we're all good. We don't need any more of that. Please stop. So then my question to you is, well, how much is the surplus? How can we calculate how much of a surplus we have? Well, that's pretty easy. Can I move this? Yes, I can. Okay. So we're going to come down here and say, well, we have 20. We only want 20, but we have 40. So if you subtract those two, our surplus is 20 units. Does that make sense to you, right? Okay, let me erase my drawing. Then the other could be true. At the price of $2, we also have disequilibrium where the quantity that's being demanded is too high for the quantity that's being supplied, because consumers are like, yes, give me all the ones. I would love to pay $2. You have 50 being demanded, but the producers are like, no way, we're not making that many because we're losing money. So they're only going to supply a smaller amount over here. And so what we have created, what do you think we would call this? If too much is a surplus, we're going to use another S word. And now what we have is a shortage. So where the quantity demanded is greater than the quantity that's being supplied, we have a shortage. And so the question is, how much of a shortage? Well, again, you just subtract the two. 50 minus 20, and our shortage is 30 units. I think you get the idea. It's not too complicated. And so what economists are constantly concerned with is equilibrium. You do it now. How much is the shortage if we set the price at $1? So if we set the price here, what's our shortage? That's probably supposed to be here. I don't know. What does the demand schedule say? Lulz. It says 80. So it's supposed to be here. Okay, 70 units. All right, rolling along. So that is the role that the free market plays for us. How do we know what is the right price? Well, the market will tell us what is the right price. If there's a shortage, then that tells us that the price is, what do you think? If we have a shortage. Shortage means what? That we are down in this area where demand is ahead of supply. That means the price is too low. That means that in order to get to equilibrium, we have to raise the price up. Next. So when there's a surplus, producers are going to lower the price. They're like, hey, we've got too many units. People don't want it. When it's that expensive, let's lower the price to work our way towards equilibrium. And if there's a shortage, then the producers are going to raise their prices until we get to a point where the quantity that's supplied is equal to the quantity that's being demanded. Let's see. I gave you the answer already. In the market shown in the graph above, at a price of $5, there will be. So what do you think is going to happen? Well, $5, I don't necessarily know, but it's going to probably be somewhere up here. So I'm going to draw my line across. Do I have a shortage or do I have a surplus if we are looking at a price that is above equilibrium? That means we have a surplus, and the market will eventually correct itself if that's the case. Okay, I don't care about that. All right, so I have for you on those notes um, a general step-by-step guide of how to graph supply and demand. I don't think I necessarily need to go through it with you, like these are the steps. I'm just going to model it for you. But bottom line, before you start any graph, you're going to simply start off by drawing your equilibrium. You're going to label it price. You're going to label it, I'm sorry, not your equilibrium, your axes, and label it price and quantity, and then put a generic supply to the sky and call it S1, and then make a generic demand to the dirt and call it demand 1. Before we do anything, we're going to put our original supply and demand curves with all the parts labeled. And we need to label our original equilibrium price and quantity. So I am going to change color just so that you can see it. And I would mark that point right here. And I would drop a line down to the x-axis. And I'm going to label that quantity with a little e. What do you think the little e stands for? That's right. It stands for equilibrium. So this is our original quantity at equilibrium. And then I'm going to drop a line over here and I'm going to label it P. And again, I'm going to put a cute little E there that stands for the price at equilibrium. So QE and PE, that is our price and quantity when we are at equilibrium. Sometimes you will see graphs where they put a generic supply and a generic demand, and they're going to call it Q1, P1. That's okay. But for us, for the College Board, we're going to label it P with a little e for equilibrium because we know that's where we started, and then we'll shift. But if you see it like the other way with a P1 and a Q1, I just don't want you to be thrown off by seeing it done that way. Okay, so let's walk through the steps. So step 1 is to draw your, before the demand, draw your equilibrium. You already have, let me see. Can I stop sharing? I did. Let's switch to this other paper. I just want to take a look at it for a second. Okay, so here's this other paper. This part up here in the corner is what I was saying we're going to ignore right now. So if you notice, I was being nice to you and I already gave you the axes and the original supply and demand curves. But let's go ahead and for the first graph, let's go ahead and we're going to put a little 1 next to the supply. And we're going to put a little 1 next to the demand and go ahead and mark your equilibrium, drop it down and put a Q with a little e for the quantity at equilibrium. And then we're going to drop another line over to the y-axis and we're going to label that P with a little e for the price at equilibrium. So if you just want to take a second, you can literally do that for all these graphs. We can come over here and we can say 1, 1, equilibrium, drop it down. That's my QE. That's my PE. Before we even look at the question, this is what you have to set up. And it is kind of annoying if you were doing an FRQ or doing a practice problem, but like legit, I'm like, okay, axis, labels, lines, labels, equilibrium, labels, and you'll get faster. You'll get faster at doing it. And look how ugly my graph is. Now, some of you OCD children are like, Miss These, it's all crooked and it's not labeled straight. Okay, that's fine. And Channing is like, yes, that is the perfect graph I've ever seen in my whole life. So the point is, you're going to get better at drawing these faster, and they don't necessarily have to look perfect when we're just doing our little sketches to answer a question. You do have to label everything. By not looking perfect, it can look a little, but you still have to label everything in order for it to be correct. Okay, so you have all your little parts labeled. I'm going to go back to the original PowerPoint, but you're going to walk through each of the scenarios that I give you. You're going to graph them here on this paper, but just to speed things up, you don't have to draw the axis in the original curves. Okay. Okay, so we're going to analyze what happens to hamburgers with these 5 different scenarios. So let's start things off. Okay, scenario number 1. New grilling technology cuts production time in half for hamburgers. Great. The first thing you have to ask yourself is, does that affect my ability to make it? Or does that affect my willingness to buy it? So we're going to have to decide, well, is this scenario going to affect supplier demand? And so ask yourself, is it making people more willing to buy it or less willing to buy it? Or is it making producers more willing or less willing to sell it? So first of all, is this going to affect buying or is this going to affect selling? So in this scenario, it says that we have new technology and it cuts production time in half. Well, that has to do with selling it or producing it. So which graph are we going to shift? We're going to shift the supply graph in this scenario. So what shifter? Remember, we have 5 shifters of demand and 5 shifters of supply. So let's see if Miss Thies can be cute. I think I can do it. You put your own little note. I'm going to write it here, and then you have your notes. The 5 shifters of demand. This is a fun game for me. Number 1, taste and preferences. Number 2, income. How much money I have affects how much stuff I'm going to buy. Number 3, oh Lord. Wait, what just happened? Wait. Oh, I broke it. All right. Watching me do a Zoom thing is like watching your granddad try and send a text message. I'm sorry. Let's try again. So we're going to put the demand shifters are going to be taste and preferences. Make your list. Incomes, number of buyers, right? If there's more people, there's more demand. If there's less people, there's less demand. Future expectations. So, like, if I know that something's going on sale next week, I'm going to wait and buy it when it's on sale. I'm not going to buy it now. Or if I know the price is going to go up next month, I'm going to buy it now instead of waiting until next month. And then the last one is related goods. So that would be like the price of substitutes and complements. So these are the shifters for demand. And then your shifters for supply, literally just watched a video for that like 10 minutes ago. So hopefully you can remember. But we've got input costs. We've got number of sellers. We have technology. Again, future expectations of price. That one affects both buyers, Expectations. I spelled it right. Good job, Leanne. Okay, and then the last one is government actions like subsidies and taxes. So make yourself a little cheat sheet over to the side so that you can have these written down to utilize while we're working our way through these shifts. Okay, bye. Bye. Fine. Okay, so this says new grilling technology cuts production time in half. And so the question is, does that affect our ability to buy it or our ability to produce it? And that's going to decide if we're shifting supply or demand. And so this is going to affect our willingness or ability to produce it, which means, hello, we're going to shift supply. Now, if we have new technology and it cuts the time in half, does that mean we can make more of it? Or are we going to make less of it? We are going to make more of it. So first of all, the shifter for this one under supply is technology, and it is going to increase supply. So take your little finger, oop, put it right here in the middle of your paper. If we are increasing, which way are we moving, right or left? We're going to move to the right. And again, I don't know. I'm moving my finger. It's probably like a mirror image. It probably doesn't mean anything to you, but fine. I'm moving my finger. But move your finger to the right. And then we're going to say to ourselves, I'm shifting supply. And supply goes where? Supply goes to the sky. So I moved over to the right. And now I'm going to go, sound helps. Do, 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 do. Supply to the sky. What do I need? I need an S2, and nothing is complete until I draw my arrow, right? Okay, there it is. We also need to label our new price and our new quantity. So come over here and put a new equilibrium point. We had an equilibrium point here, but now our equilibrium is shifted because our supply curve has shifted. So then, boop, drop it down, boop, 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 boop. I'm telling you, the sound effects help. Drop it over, and you're going to label it quantity 1 and P1 because that goes with our new shifted curves. Okay. Now, I know this stupid one has this thing like this, but we're going to put a S1 and we're just going to call this an S2. Some textbooks don't put a 1 and they just put a 1 for the shifted one. I don't like it. And I know sometimes you're going to see PowerPoints where it's labeled all funky dunky, but for us, every original curve is going to get a 1 and every new shifted curve is going to get a 2. That's just how we're going to do it to be consistent. Okay. So we'll make this a P1, make this a P2, and then this is our new price and this is our new quantity. So then let's ask ourselves the question on the, like, what is all this crap for, Miss Thies? The question on the multiple choice exam is going to say, what happened to price and quantity if new grilling technology is invented? Well, let's see. First of all, price went down. I myself prefer to literally draw the arrow on the axis over to the side so that you can physically see with your eyeballs, oh, look, it went down. And then what happened to quantity? Well, over here, I'm going to draw myself an arrow showing that it increased. So price went up, lulz, price did not go up. Price went down, quantity went up. That was the effect on the hamburger market. It's going to say, what was the effect on the market? Whenever they're talking about the effect on the market, they're just asking you what happened to supply and demand. They're asking you what happened to price and quantity when they say what happened to the hamburger market. Well, price went down, quantity went up. Okay, let's keep rolling. Our next example says, the price of chicken sandwiches, a substitute, increases. So again, does this affect our willingness to buy it or our ability to make it? That's going to decide. Buying it deals with demand and making it deals with supply. So if we're talking about the price of chicken sandwiches, a substitute going up, well, that affects consumer behavior. That affects buyers. So that means we're going to be looking at the demand curve. So go ahead, make sure on your graph you put a little 1 next to the S, you put a little 1 next to the D, and go ahead and make sure, I think we did it already, but you're dropping your equilibrium points and labeling them PE and QE. Okay, so chicken sandwiches are more expensive. What happens to demand? Well, people aren't going to want those expensive chicken sandwiches. So instead, they're going to buy more hamburgers. So that means that the demand is going to increase. And when it increases, it shifts to the right. So put your little finger in the middle of your equilibrium point and move to the right. Did you do it? Good. Now the sound effects help. Do, 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 do. Demand goes where? Demand goes to the dirt. So go ahead and draw your new shifted equilibrium, but we're not going to call it a 1. We're going to call this D2. And you have to draw the arrow. It's not complete without the arrow. And go ahead and drop your new price and your new quantity. So from your new equilibrium point, we're going to draw our point, drop it down, Q1, drop it over, P1. And then I draw my arrows on the axis because I'm a dummy and I want to see what happened. Now, price went up, quantity also went up. So that was the effect on the hamburger market if the price for chicken sandwiches increases. Good? Okay, let's go to the next one. The next one says the price of hamburgers falls from $3 to $1. What is the effect on the market? Every single one of you better be saying, Miss, this is a trick question because what? Price doesn't shift the curve. This is the price of the actual item that we are graphing. And so all that's going to happen is we're going to shift to a different price point. You're like, but Miss Dees, I don't know how because there's 2 different lines. Okay, that's all right. Watch. Now we had a point here at our original equilibrium, but we dropped to a lower price point. So first thing I want you to do is just make up some arbitrary new price. I don't care how much further you drop it down. As long as you make it lower below, that's fine. It indicates a price drop. So we're going to say this was $3. Fine. And here's our price at $1. And we're going to call that price 1. And then go ahead and drop new equilibrium points. But now we have to look at these separately. Cover up the left side of the graph and only look at the demand curve. At the demand curve, we're going to drop down to here. This is our quantity, and we're going to put a little d because that is the quantity that's being demanded. So the point splits. The price on the demand curve is going to be different than the price on the supply curve, where it intersects all the way across. So on the demand curve, at price of $1, this is our quantity of demand. But then over here on the supply curve, at a price of $1, we're going to label that Q sub S because that is the amount that's being supplied. So now my question to you is, do we have more demand or more supply? Well, quantity demanded is ahead. We have more being demanded than being supplied. So what do we call that? Let's see if my notes have it. It's a shortage, right? We have a shortage because the quantity that's being demanded increased and the quantity that's being supplied decreased. But if they ask you the question, what happens to the market for hamburgers when the price drops from $3 to $1, the correct answer is it creates a shortage. How do I know it's a shortage? Anytime the price drops below equilibrium, Notice that down here, the demand is ahead. If the demand is out in front, that means we've created a shortage because there's more demand than there is supply. But if, for example, instead we raised the price, notice that when I draw my new intersection points, the supply curve is out in front. Anytime the price rises above equilibrium, we have created a surplus because supply is out in front for our new point and demand is in the back. That means we have more being supplied than being demanded. If this is confusing to you, it's okay. I promise we're going to do a lot that are like this one, but here we are. Okay, next, the price of ground beef triples. Does that affect our willingness to buy it? Or does that affect our willingness to sell / make it? Well, ground beef is simply one of the ingredients that goes into making hamburgers. So this is affecting our ability to make it, to produce it. What shifter is this? Look at your list. The price of ground beef goes up. The shifter for this one is input costs, right? Buying the ingredients has become more expensive for our producers. So this is going to shift the supply curve. Okay, let's shift the supply curve. So for you guys, go in, drop down your equilibrium points. You're going to label QE, then drop over to the side and label PE. Make sure you put a little 1 and a little 1. That's our starting off point. Take your finger, put it in your equilibrium. Put it in your equilibrium. That should go on the quote board. Okay. Sorry. So put your finger at equilibrium. We are shifting supply. If the price for the ingredients is increased, are we going to make more or are we going to make less? We're going to make less, which means you're going to shift to the left. So move your finger over to the left and then give yourself doot, 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 doot. Supply goes where? To the sky. So it's going to look like this. Make sure that we're labeling this S2. Make sure you've included your arrow. Make sure you marked your new equilibrium point and dropped down Q1, P1. And what happened to the market? Well, price went up, quantity went down. That was the effect on the hamburger market when the price for ground beef tripled. It's tedious. There's a lot of steps. Is what it is. Okay. You will get faster. It's like anything, playing a sport, playing an instrument, learning the moves to a Spirit Fingers cheer, whatever it is, you're going to go slow when you first start it. But once you start getting some muscle memory, you will be able to crank these graphs out faster. And trust me when I tell you, we're going to practice a lot. So you'll get it. Okay. Human fingers found in multiple hamburger restaurants. All right. Does that affect our willingness to buy it or our ability to make it? Well, I'm going to say that affects consumers. They don't want some nasty human fingers in their hamburgers. So if it's affecting our ability or willingness to buy it, that's going to shift demand. So let's make sure we've labeled your D1, your S1. Drop your original equilibrium point, QE and PE. Then we're shifting demand, right? So put your finger at the equilibrium. Are we going to buy more hamburgers with human fingers in them or less hamburgers? We're going to buy less hamburgers. So that means we're going to shift the demand curve to the left. So go ahead and move your finger to the left. Good. And then drop in your new curve. And again, we're going to call this D2. Put your arrow. Oops, what am I doing? That's not right. Here we go. Here's our new equilibrium point, and then drop down Q1 and P1. And then what was the effect on the market? Well, price went down and quantity went down. Yeah, good. I think we're going to save double shifts for another day. That's where we're going to stop right now. I think that's enough for you to absorb, right? Um, Here's what I'd like for you to do. If you are feeling confident, you can, I think, start your homework. You definitely have the information you need to do the supply 1.5 page of your topic packet. You have everything you need. Go and do your supply page. And I think you can try starting to do your topic packet pages for 1.6. Okay, let me just show you one quick thing on your topic packet and then I'll stop yapping at you. So if you look at your topic packet, the first two pages are more like thinking it through. You don't have to do any graphs yet. Like one little graph right here, one little graph right here. But once you get to this page, I just want you to notice that what is happening here is a cause and effect. So you read the scenario, and the first page is talking about oranges and grapes, and it gives you all this information that you need here. Uh-oh, do I know how to zoom in? Don't be dumb, Leanne. Okay. So it tells you in here some things that you might need to know. Assume that juice producers substitute orange and grapes. So oranges and grapes are substitute products. They tell you that in the question. They also are going to tell you that juice and eggs are complementary goods. They tell you that in the question. They're also telling you that eggs are an input for pancakes. And then they're also going to tell you that pancakes and syrup are complementary goods. So they've given you some criteria to keep in mind, and you're going to see one thing happen, it causes a shift. Then you need to look at that thing that happened and use it to decide what happens in the next scenario. So the original thing is what happens to the market for oranges. And they're going to say perfect weather conditions have affected the crop of oranges, but it did not affect grapes. So that means we have more oranges. So you're going to start off by shifting supply and see what happens to price and quantity. Based off of that new price for oranges, ask yourself what happens to the market for grapes. So, original shift to oranges, increased supply. We had great weather, lots of oranges, great. What happens to the price when I shifted supply? Did price go up? Did price go down? Then, using that change in price for oranges, use that in your head to ask myself, well, what's going to happen to grapes? And they told me in the question that oranges and grapes are substitute goods. So now moving into part B, I have an increase or a decrease, I'm not giving you the answer, in the price to a complementary good, lulz, substitute good for grapes. Then think through, well, what happens if I have a change in price of a substitute good? What happens to grapes? Graph it out, do your shift. What happened to the price for grapes? Okay, I'm going to take that price for grapes. It went up or it went down, and then ask myself what happens to the market for juice. You're using the change in price from the previous graph to determine what happens in the next graph. I think that should help you. Okay, that's what I've got for you. Good luck. We're going to practice a lot. You can do it. I have faith in you. Get started on your homework. Bye.